Nigeria. I'm from Liberia, by the way. The name of my country is Liberia. And if you know Liberia, Nigeria helped us in the 90s when we had civil war in our country. Liberia was falling apart. We fought civil war, from 1999 down to 2003, and Nigerian forces helped quench the civil war in Liberia. So Nigeria was the hope of the continent, the giant of Africa, the country we all look up to and say, one day in the future, this is going to be our China. This is going to be our United States. If Nigeria succeeds, Africa succeeds. Every African, especially if you live in West Africa area, I'm not talking about regular people, but people who really analyze issue, you will know that Nigeria was the hope of the continent. But unfortunately, in the last 10 years, we've seen Nigeria going down the drain. We've seen Nigeria promising future now becoming dashed, and we've seen that it seems that there's no hope. So when people are making a lot of analysis, I come in and tell them that this is my own understanding. The problem in Nigeria is a summary of what is happening in all of African countries, which is number one, the way we got independence, the institutions that we inherited were not decolonized. It's like the colonial masters made a deal with people we call freedom fighters, and they replaced them. They just replaced the white Oyibo with our black brother who continue the colonial legacy. And I will give you an example. Your police is a typical colonial police. During the colonial era, the police was meant to protect the colonial elite. The police was there to beat up the people, subdue them, and terrorize them to protect the colonial masters. That's what the African police do now. That's what the Nigerian police does. The elite of the colonial era, they were bourgeoisie who lived in Africa, but then their real home is London. Their hospital is Paris. When the colonial masters get sick, they take them to Lisbon, they take them to Paris, they take them abroad to go to get treated in the what they call the metropole. And the Africa was the farm, was the place they work, was where is where you extract the natural resources. The London is where you go to enjoy it. Our elite are following the same pattern. The educational institutions were designed to make the colonial masters to look like saviors and tell the people who have been exploited to appear as if they are being indebted. They have to be grateful to the colonial masters for giving them education. Why that education was actually a miseducation. If you watch our education today, it followed the same pattern. The religion was created to pacify the public in order for them not to stage a revolution. The colonialists were in bed with the religious masters. They tell the people to calm down. In fact, our traditional rulers, some of them were compromised. Those of them who refused to compromise were removed from their throne. If you compromise with the colonial system, then you remain on your throne. Today is the same thing. Our traditional leaders have to compromise with the men in Abuja. The unknown forces in Abuja, in the capital, they have to connive with them to destroy your destiny. Now, all I'm saying here is that the colonial system continues, but it has just changed face. It just have a black face on it. So I say this to tell you, when people say, let's divide Nigeria, let's break up the country, let's have a Yoruba nation, let's have a Igbo nation. As a Pan-Africanist, I'm sad because our philosophy was to create a black United States of Africa. So when we see now that a country like Nigeria cannot survive, that means that our theory has been debunked. But here is what we tell people. It doesn't matter if you divide Nigeria today into 7 countries. The same elite who are in bed with London, who are in bed with these forces in Europe, they will be the same elite who will take over this country. Example, South Sudan and Sudan. Did South Sudan become better after they broke out from Sudan? I don't think so. Many countries are breaking up in Africa after independence, but it was the same elite who were transported to those new countries. The main people who wanted actual freedom were killed, were removed. Those who wanted real transformation were replaced with the bourgeoisie. Then the second thing I want to say, the forces, the internal forces that are working in African countries are against the people. If you look at Nigeria very well today, you can determine the future of Nigeria by looking at the forces that are controlling Nigeria. What are these internal forces? One, the religious group. I grew up in northern Nigeria. I went to school there. I was born a Muslim. I studied the Quran. I went to, if you have been to Niger State, Mina, if you know the institution called RET, Islamic Education Trust in Mina, controlled by Sheikh Ahmed Lemu. Those are the people that brought me up. They gave me scholarship. I went to that school in New Horizons College. I graduated there. I learned the Quran. I was a Muslim until I started traveling, and I decided to put religion aside. What I saw in northern Nigeria is that these people were colonized twice. They were first colonized by the Sokoto Caliphate through the Islamic Revolution. They were still under that colonialism, then the British colonialism came. So they are not in alignment with you in the South. You don't understand. They are operating under two influence of colonial culture that they have inherited. One, they inherited an extreme version of Islam called Wahhabism, which even Saudi Arabia is trying to abolish and embrace modernity. This northern Nigeria inherited an archaic, outdated Islamic view that came from Baghdad and Saudi Arabia those days. They inherited it. And it is very much entrenched in their culture. They do not believe in Nigeria as long as they are not on top. As long as Islam, for them, the vision for Nigeria is for Islam to triumph. That's the understanding for them. The destiny of Nigeria must lean toward Islamic revolution. That is the elite, the agenda. I'm not talking about the ordinary people on the street. They don't know what's going on. But the elite, that was the thinking of Usman Dan Fodio. That was the thinking of Sir Amadou Bello. That was the thinking of all this elite that came up. The design, when they took over the army, you don't understand why they influenced the army in Nigeria. Their vision is to lead what Islamic revolution. Now, for you guys in the South, you had only one colonialism, which is the European. That's why there are people, Chris, John, Johnson. When you are tired of European colonialism, you fall back to your culture. They don't have no culture to fall back to. They only have Islamic extremism to fall back to when they are angry. That's why every riot in the North take an Islamic tone. Any fight, any fighting has to take an Islamic tone. They do not have any ideology or philosophy to fight with other than Islam. And this make you guys to live in two different planets, but yet you are trying to build a country. For me, even as a Pan-Africanist who want Africa to be together, I can tell you that northern and southern Nigeria cannot survive. I'm sorry to tell everyone, it will not survive. What I want to speak here tonight, mayegun, the issue of Nigeria.